me now welcoming Noah Miller, a March of the Living alumnus.
Time and time again, the question arises, how is it that one group of people can defy all odds and continue to thrive through hatred and oppression, not to mention their small size? How have the Jews overcome slavery, expulsion, the Holocaust, and even today, when terrorist organizations vow to wipe us off the map? It's not easy being a Jew. It never has been, and it never will be. The answer to that question, though, can be summed up in one word, and that word is unity. It has been our greatest strength since the days of the temple destruction. In good times and in bad, we have continued to be unified, from the crossing of the Red Sea to the death marches at Auschwitz. As Jews, we thrive through cohesion and togetherness. 70 years after the Holocaust, we are no longer facing the Nazis. We are no longer forced to live in egregious conditions while awaiting our time in the gas chambers. And we are no longer forced to hide our Judaism. Instead, we live in the greatest time in the history of the Jews, a time where I can freely wear my yarmulke through the streets of Miami and be greeted by a Shabbat Shalom and a handshake instead of dirty looks. A time where I can hang a mezuzah on my doorpost, not to be followed by vandalism, but to be followed by a neighbor hanging one on theirs. A time where Israel is thriving as a country who not only is the sole democracy in the Middle East, but an exemplar for civil rights while being a leader in world and economic powers. So why is it that with all this great potential around us, the overall intermarriage rate amongst Jews is 58%? Amongst non-Orthodox Jews, a staggering 71%. Why is it that overall 22% of U.S. Jews describe themselves as having no religion? For Jews born after 1980, that statistic is even worse, with 1 out of 3 Jews stating they have no religion, and only 1 out of 4 Jews in America stating that religion is important to them. 70 years after the atrocities of the Holocaust, we fight a different type of war. I'm not talking about the war on Hezbollah or Hamas, or even the war on anti-Semitism. I am talking about the war against ourselves. Today, we fight a war against assimilation, against the idea that Jews must be Americans first and Jews second, an idea that to be accepted, we must leave behind our past traditions and adopt the traditions of today, an idea that in order to move forward, we must forget our past, an idea that in order to get where we want, we must forget where we've been. I am who I am today because I am a Jew, because my Zaidi was a Jew, and his Zaidi was a Jew. Why is it that when my Zaidi was in Auschwitz, during the worst genocide in history, he did not lose faith in Hashem? Why, in the midst of extermination camps, sickening medical experiments, and a total disregard for human life, did my Zaidi continue his faith in Judaism? It was not to watch his grandchildren assimilate and forget their religion, but instead, to watch his grandchildren be proud of their Judaism, to watch his grandchildren read from the Torah at their bar mitzvah, to teach his grandchildren how to wrap tefillin, and how to make a difference in other lives by doing mitzvahs. My Zaidi kept his faith in Hashem during those unfathomable times because he knew that one day his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren would carry on the traditions that his brothers and sisters were literally dying for. Last week at the Passover Seder, we learned about the 4 sons: the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the son who doesn't know how to ask. The son we did not talk about, though, is the 5th son, the son who isn't even at a Seder, the son who never got the proper Jewish education he deserved, the son who never knew he was a Jew, or who didn't care enough to acknowledge his Judaism. That son is the assimilated son. It is our job to reach the countless number of Jews who have lost Judaism, the ones who believe that in order to be a good Jew, they must go to an extreme, which is a life they know they cannot live. Instead of waiting for those Jews to find Torah, we must bring Torah to them. We must show them that a good Jew is not necessarily someone who observes all Torah law or keeps kosher, but instead someone who is always bettering themselves as a Jew. This year doing 1 mitzvah, next year doing 2. A Jew who wraps tefillin once a year is just as holy as a Jew who wraps once a day. A Jew who lights Shabbos candles for the first time at her age of 50 is no less holy than a Jew who's been lighting since she was a little girl. The Nazis may have killed 6 million Jewish bodies, but they did not kill 6 million Jewish souls. Those souls are still alive, waiting to be touched, waiting to be brought back to Judaism. It is our job to bring those souls back. It is not enough to have the courage to remember. Instead, we must have the courage to act. We must have the courage to reach out to each and every Jew, because every Jew has a Jewish soul, and every Jewish soul can be brought back to Judaism. We must have the courage to bring back the fifth son, not by telling him about the warmth of Judaism, but instead by warming his heart with Judaism. The courage to act means putting everything at stake in order to ensure that our grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren live in a world where Ahavat Israel, love of a fellow Jew, thrives in more synagogues, day schools, JCCs, sleepaway camps, and homes than we could count. If you know Aleph, you have a responsibility to teach Aleph. If you have a grandson, it is your responsibility to teach him how to wrap tefillin. If you have a daughter, it is your responsibility to light Shabbos candles with her. We must stop walking away from the tree of life, but instead nourish its roots to ensure this tree will continue to thrive and be more fruitful than ever. While a tree with strong roots can withstand a harsh storm, it can hardly hope to grow them once the storm is on the horizon. The reason the Jews have withstood the storms of slavery, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, is because we have continued to be united throughout the ages. We have been united through our traditions and our beliefs. We have taught our children what it means to be Jewish, and they have taught their children. We not only understand the idea of tikkun olam, to repair the world, but we teach it in our day schools. We act on it in our communities, and we make a difference in others' lives. Just like the countless number of righteous Gentiles who risked their own lives to save the lives of thousands of Jews, we must stand up for justice and for our beliefs. We owe so much to our Christian brothers and sisters who stood by our side throughout history in the best and the worst and continue to help us create a better world. On behalf of the thousands of Jewish children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who stand here today, because your Christian grandparents stood up and sheltered Jewish lives in liberated camps, we thank you. Let us all remember what others did for the Jews, the Jewish people, and let us emulate them. We must take a lesson from Pope John the 23rd and Pope John Paul II, who were canonized today, and challenge ourselves to become saints, tzaddiks, and mensches. Now, I do not speak of our struggles today to sadden you, but instead to inspire you. There are great strides that have been made in the Jewish community and great organizations leading the way. I saw it with Chabad on campus at the University of Central Florida, where over 200 Jewish students would come weekly for a Shabbos dinner. And in Miami, where every week there are enormously successful Jewish events connecting Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Jews. I have seen what can be done and the difference that can be made. There is a story of a beloved rabbi. When he was just a young child, he was playing with a group of his friends, and they were climbing a ladder. None of his friends were able to reach the top, but he successfully did. Later on, his grandfather asked him, "Why is it that you were able to reach the top and they weren't?" "Because as they climbed, they kept looking down," the boy responded. "They saw how high they were, and they were satisfied. As I climbed, I kept looking upward. I saw how low I was, and it motivated me to climb higher." We must never be satisfied by how far we've come. We must be motivated by how much more we have to do. Thank you.